Our pension system is only for the government employees, not for the people of India. Only government employees. That means the rest of the population is funding the government employees. Let me start off with a sense of where I come from. I'm a great optimist. I believe that a lot of our problems in terms of governance and politics and administration and rule of law, they're not because Indians are useless or incapable or immoral. It's because we have not designed institutions properly. And wherever we did the right things, we got the right results. So there's no rocket science. It's not that one country is capable of running itself well or making democracy work better. Another country cannot do it. Particularly a country like India with enormous strengths in terms of civilization, history, culture, and a whole lot of other things. You only have to look at a country like United States and what Donald Trump represents and what's happening in that country in terms of polarization to understand our enormous strengths as a society and country. So I'm an optimist. Shivani has been very kind. She talked about a lot of things I might or might not have accomplished. Now, I always have a realistic sense. I know in the kingdom of the blind, one-eyed man is the king. So when nothing much happens, a few people who are fortunate to be instrumental in getting some things done, they appear to be great heroes. But I'm very mindful that in the larger context of what needs to happen in the country, what all of us together have accomplished is simply marginal. There is a lot more to be accomplished. I'm extremely conscious of that. The third one, for an optimist, this is actually a slightly distressing statement. At this point of time, and perhaps over the years, it appears that the appetite for real political and governance reform in India is now very weak. Nobody seriously is interested in transforming political parties or improving the electoral system to remove the money power in politics, the vote buying, distribution of gifts, or the short-term individual welfareism at the cost of the long-term good, or the polarization on grounds of caste, region, religion, etc., etc. Right now, they're possible, they can be addressed, but right now I don't see any serious appetite to address them for a variety of reasons. But what we have going for us is a potential for reasonably high economic growth. Belated though it is, we missed many opportunities. We bungled very badly. But for a variety of reasons, we seem to be having an opportunity now. 7-8% growth rate for a sustained period of 25-30 years is very much within reach, but it's not guaranteed. And before I proceed further, the difference between 7% and 8% is very spectacular. And between 5% and 8%, much, much more. So it's not merely a percentage point. The other day, somebody made a simple back-of-the-envelope calculation and showed us that if we grow at 7% versus 8% over a period of 9 to 10 years, the difference in GDP per annum would be $600 billion per annum. We're losing that much of production productivity, therefore that many jobs and incomes and so on and so forth. From the government point of view, the government would be losing roughly about 10 lakh crores, 10 trillion rupees of revenue annually by not having 8% growth but only having 7%. And obviously, once you understand these numbers, you understand the consequences. So high growth matters. The reason why I'm focusing of late on public finances and the health of the public finances and what needs to be done to make it work is the one thing going in favor of this country now is a reasonable opportunity of moderately higher high growth rate for the next 20-30 years. If that is bungled, if there we fail, we miss another great opportunity. Not only is it going to be devastating economically for the country, but it's going to hurt us very badly in terms of democracy and political management, etc., and governance. Because if at least incomes rise, people become self-reliant, more confident of themselves, and they see opportunities all around. They will start thinking differently, like middle classes. They will start cherishing freedoms and protecting them and building institutions and looking at where the tax money is going and so on and so forth. But even that chance is not given to ourselves. And if there is no impulse for genuine governance and political reform in India, then I think India will pay a very heavy price for a generation or more. So this is the bias from which I come. I'm not a neutral observer here. I'm deeply concerned and committed. So why public finances and why now? What needs to be done? What's happening in many states, not all states, but many states is we are living way beyond our needs. First, there is what is called revenue deficit. Many of you are familiar, but some may not be. Revenue deficit simply means that our day-to-day current expenditure is more than our revenues. That means we are borrowing to meet current expenditure. For any household or a company, it's a danger signal. If to run an establishment, you're spending more than what you earn and you're borrowing, then you have a problem. Borrowing is supposed to go for investments. Our families do that. Even though we are a poor country, almost every family in India lives for the children. And even if we get limited income, we are thrifty and we save some money. If we borrow, we build assets in the hope of better incomes for the future. That's our culture, that's our tradition, that's our civilization. But our governments are acting completely counter to our own family's culture. Across India, Hindu, Muslim, North, South, Hindu, upper caste, lower caste, village, urban, all of us feel the same way. But our governments have become very profligate and reckless. In most states, there are huge revenue deficits and they're mounting. Two, debt obviously is mounting because if current expenditure demands borrowing and you also have investment expenditure, therefore you have to borrow further. And sometimes investments are very foolishly. They appear to be investment on paper, but you spend enormous sums for very little gain. There's no cost-benefit analysis. For instance, I don't want to go into party politics, but just to give an example, because we are now in Hyderabad, because I'm in Hyderabad right now. Telangana, a very rich state with the largest surplus in the country in terms of public finances in 2014 when the state was formed, because it has the benefit of a big city constituting about 35 to 40% of the population of the state, 80% or more of the economy of the state. That benefit in a small state, a big city, the benefit is there. But they squandered all that. Today, Telangana is running practically every day or every alternate day with the Reserve Bank overdrafts. The debts are mounting. Therefore, all over the country, while the norm for the states is 20% of the GSDP should be the debt limit. I can understand some slippage because of COVID and some other temporary problems, but states have gone to 50-55%, some states. And they're also having very large off-budget loans. They're not even trying to show to us in the budget. They're pretending it's borrowed by some corporation. Actually, the government and government alone has to repay because the corporation has no revenue stream. In some states, even the government assets like collector's office, government lands, secretariat, they are pledged as security at high interest rate because they're off-budget loans. In some states, even the future government revenues from, let us say, GST or the state excise duty or something else, they're pledged into an escrow account of the lender. This is unheard of anywhere in the world, that a sovereign government will pledge the future revenues, which are a sovereign function, to a private or some public lender because they're not able to find any other security. That shows how desperate in some situations the things are. So that's where we are. And some states are particularly bad. Some states are doing well. Even a poor state like Orissa is doing well actually. What it shows is Orissa's example is a very instructive example. Orissa is relatively poor. And Orissa has a popular government elected and re-elected for the past 20 years. And Orissa's public finances are a model for the rest of India. So if you really have the political will, you can be popular, you can satisfy the people, you can improve the conditions, and you can maintain fiscal discipline. So the idea, the notion that no, you're a poor country, what do we do? Fiscal discipline is not possible. It gives all kinds of theories. It's nonsensical. Orissa is an instructive example. I can cite some other examples, but Orissa is an important example. Now, in this context, there are two things, big things happening. One, we all know, particularly Telugu-speaking people, I suppose at least half the group must be Telugu-speaking people. The profligacy, the short-term individual welfare measures. I recognize that in any society, short-term amelioration of living conditions, improvement of the conditions, eliminating the pain of poverty is important. And in a democracy, much more so. In a poor country, much more so. All that I'm urging is a balance should be there. If government is all about only the short-term delivery of palliatives without improving the living conditions in the long term, without enhancing the productivity of the people, without ensuring good infrastructure, investment, jobs, quality education and skills and good health care, then no matter how much you spend, people are forever, perpetually in poverty. You're only pretending to do something good to the people. So some balance is required. That's all I'm urging. I'm not saying that you can completely give up all the subsidies that we're giving to the poor. They need it and we can't give up. And luckily, we don't even have to give up significantly. Actually, we don't have to give up anything except if you have some balance, even from now, if you at least freeze the expenditure and don't go overboard increasingly on a daily basis, expanding the welfare line, within 2-3 years, things will be much better because we are a growing economy, fortunately. If you grow at 6, 7, 8%, with inflation another 5, 6%, the revenues are going to grow at 14, 15% per annum. So if you keep the welfare expenditure at least frozen, don't allow it to grow too fast. With 15% annual growth in revenues, within 3 years or so, things will be pretty manageable. So it's not an impossible task. It's a pretty manageable task and a necessary task because if we don't do it, destruction is awaiting us. But a far more dangerous thing than the short-term welfare measures is a particular Indian affliction. For those who are not familiar, let me give a bit of a background. World over, in mature democracies, rich countries, some not so rich countries, we have some kind of what you call social security system or pension system. To give one illustration, it would be easier to give one country's illustration that's more or less reflective of other countries. The numbers may vary slightly, but the pattern, the model is pretty similar. Take United States. Practically everybody in the country is in this social security scheme. You all know many people in the US. The moment you go there, first thing you get a social security number. That's almost the most important identity in the United States. Now, whoever is working, they contribute what is called a payroll tax in the US, something else in some other countries, but roughly similar pattern. In the US, for instance, 6.2% of the salary goes towards payroll tax. The employer, if you're a government employee, the government, if you are a private sector employee, the employer pays an equal amount into that fund, 6.2%. If you're a self-employed, there's a slightly different formula. So every month, money is accumulating in this pension fund, social security fund. From that, money is paid after you retire. Typically at the age of 65, some countries 66, 67. France had 62 until recently. With great difficulty, they made it 64 just now. So after that age, you are entitled. So what are the components of social security program in those countries? One, it's universal. Everybody gets it. Two, it is fully funded. You are not taking money out of the tax money in future. You are putting the money today. So it's accounted for. The current generation is putting away money for the current generation's future needs. You are not burdening the future generation. Three, it is not index linked. The money is frugal, not a vast amount, and it does not grow continuously. Whether you're Bill Gates or somebody else, Bill Gates may have to pay a higher sum. I think a salary ceiling of $140,000 per annum. So out of the 6.2% he has to pay, that's the highest you have to pay. If somebody makes only $20,000, they pay 6.2% of that. But they all get the same money after retirement. It's just for sustenance. Now, come to India. Our pension system is only for the government employees, not for the people of India. Only government employees. That means the rest of the population is funding the government employees. In those countries, all the population is funding all the people. Second, our pension is completely unfunded. That means you're not putting away for future pensions money every month now. You are transferring that burden in an open-ended manner to the next generation from their tax money. So for the services rendered to us today, the employee gets pension from our children, from the children's income and their tax money. It is absolutely immoral, affecting intergenerational equity and completely alien to Indian culture, where we actually provide for the children. We don't simply take away from the children. That is not our culture. And three, it is index linked. With a tremendous rise in government salaries, 30, 40 years ago, government salaries were very, very low in the country. Private sector paid better. Today, I can guarantee you, except at the very high end, an average government employee gets about 2 to 3 times minimum that of the private sector employee doing the same job. Sometimes 4 to 5 times. There's no exaggeration. Those who have some understanding of government or not. No, whether they're working or not, all that we have our views, I don't want to go into that. Simply, for the same work, government pays 3 to 4 times more, and then the salaries are rising with every 5 years pay revision commissions and then DA and so on and so forth. And therefore, an employee who might have retired at 10,000 rupees salary, there are quite a few who will be getting 60 to 70,000 rupees monthly pension. As a net result, if you take the states alone, I'm taking out the government of India from this, the pension burden in 2004 was 33,000 crores for all of Indian states. In 2021, 2 years ago, today it will be much higher, it's about 4 lakh crores. In just 19 years, the burden on the exchequer grew 13 times or 12 times, 12 to 13 times in just 19 years. It's growing exponentially. In the last 9 years, from 2012 to 2021, it grew almost 3-fold, 2.84. So it's growing exponentially. It's unsustainable. I already mentioned to you the borrowings. I mentioned to you the revenue deficit. And many studies show that if this continues in the same manner, already if you take all the states of India on an average, 125% of the states' own revenues, if they are collecting 100 rupees by way of taxes, their own taxes, excluding the transfers from Government of India, on a 100 rupee tax base, they are already spending 125 rupees on an average on only 3 items which cannot be controlled or changed: salaries, pensions, interest payments on loans. Without doing a single thing to the people, without even buying 1 liter of fuel for the vehicles of the government or consuming 1 unit of power, without doing anything else, just these 3 alone, we are spending 125% of tax revenues today. There are some states spending 170%, 174%, 168%. Now, this is the backdrop. Vajpayee government has done something very wise. An 80-year-old man looked into the future, well beyond his own lifetime, and he brought in what is called the national pension system in place of this old pension scheme. For convenience, we'll call the old pattern or the current pattern continuing OPS, the new pattern National Pension System NPS. NPS is nothing but What I've described for America or some other country. It is fully funded, but it's still only for government employees. It's not for the whole country, but it's fully funded. And therefore, from the pension fund available, that fund will be managed, invested. From that fund only, the future pensions will go. In effect, once this fully becomes operational in the country, our children will not have to pay from their tax money pensions for the services rendered in the past generation. And Vajpayee government also did something very fair to the employees. After all, many employees have joined by 2004. They were in government at that time, on the assumption that they will get the fully funded, the unfunded, index-linked pension. Therefore, the government said until 2004, whoever is in government, they will get the pension according to old pattern. But the new recruits, they'll be told clearly in advance that your pension system has changed. It's a national pension system where you have to put money and government puts money. Government of India is putting 14% of the salary, employee is putting 10%. In America, 6.2, 6.2. In India, for the union government, it's 10% for the employee, 14% the government. The whole country embraced it, union government and all the states except West Bengal. And the system is running very well. The UPA government of Dr. Manmohan Singh continued it and expanded it. 18 years have elapsed. Everything is fine. Suddenly what's happening is employees in India are incredibly powerful, government employees, unlike other countries. Because we have a very small organized sector. 90% of the workers are in the unorganized sector, weak and poor and voiceless. In the organized sector, government employees tend to have they're not a majority now, but they still have a pronounced role because they're paid higher and they're in government, they're influential, they're well connected, and of course, they're very well organized. They're building pressure on political parties. You go back to old pension system, though we agreed to the new pension system. That is the contract. We came on that basis. But we have the collective bargaining power. We will vote you out or we'll defeat you somehow or other. Or else they're threatening the parties and governments. Many weak parties are now scared. They're giving up. 5 states have already given up. West Bengal has not joined, I mentioned to you. The states that have joined and operated the national pension system, the funded pension system, have now gone. Which are those states? Punjab, Rajasthan, Himachal Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand. 5 states already. And not surprisingly, these states are some of the worst in the country in terms of performance already. Punjab and Rajasthan have 160 to 170% committed expenditure for salaries, pensions and interest, as I told you. And they have the highest debt, 55 to 60. Punjab, if you take everything put together, 60% is reaching off budget. 50% of the GDP, 20% is the norm. Same is the case with Rajasthan. Other states also are now terrified. Political parties and others are terrified. They are tempted now. Now, unless the rest of India raises its voice, we want fairness to employees. They are our people, they are from our families, from our background, they are ours. The nation cannot exist for the employees. The government and tax revenues are not only for the employees. The tax revenues are the people of India to build our collective assets, to meet our collective needs which individuals cannot meet or families cannot meet. That is the purpose of a government.